All right, everybody, welcome back to What I Wish You Knew About Your Wedding. I can't tell you guys how excited I am about this episode right here because it's going to cross multiple demographics and people that are interested in this topic because the world is obsessed with it. But specifically within weddings, we know what every couple tries to do before the wedding day and in the process of, and that is lose weight, right? Everybody wants to drop 5, 10, maybe 15 pounds, maybe even more. Now, the thing is that most people live a more sedentary lifestyle. I know I do. I don't. I go to the gym a little bit, but I don't really know what I'm doing. You know, I'm just doing it to do it. So today we have Dr. Haad, and he is going to talk to us about some of this. But first, Dr. Haad, thank you so much for being here. Really excited to talk about this and to hear what you have to say. I've consumed a lot of your media, a lot of your videos, and the Zeus Men's Health. You put out a lot of great informational content. I just want to say that, like, I'm addicted to your videos right now.
Thanks.
I've been just scrolling through them, and you just have great information. And I know specifically in the area of men's health, that it's insane. Like all the different tests and different things you offer. But I would love to have you now just take over, talk for a minute about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here. Been looking forward to this for quite some time. And so, I guess you could start with my story. Grew up in Chicago, did a biochemistry major, University of Illinois, went into medical school in Chicago Medical School. And then from there, went to California, Huntington Memorial Hospital, did my internal medicine training there, and then worked there for about 10 years. And what really, changed my approach to medicine probably was the pandemic. Just living through the pandemic, working in multiple hospitals throughout the country, had different state licenses, and just seeing the disease burden that kind of affected our healthcare system and resulted in morbidity and mortality, especially during that period of time. You really notice that obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and these chronic diseases were the patients that didn't do well. And I was like, I just had wished at that point that we had been a little bit ahead of the curve, kind of with more of a preventative focus on these patients and maybe preventing the disease of, obesity, the epidemic that we have in the country that's caused so much issue. And that's kind of what sparked my interest in longevity-based medicine and anti-aging. And then I always saw men's health as kind of an underserved area that, especially with the boom in aesthetics that kind of affected, women's health.
Yeah.
And you had just this explosion of med spas on every corner. And I'm like, well, what about us? What about the guys?
What about the guys? Where are we at? Where do we fit into this?
I hadn't seen too many, clinics or
still not
approaches for men, right? And somewhere a man can go and, feel comfortable going there, because I think there's always a stigma a lot of times for men is that I don't want to go to the doctor. Men are actually much more likely to not go to the physician. And also our health span is is shorter than women. And I think that's part of the reason why.
Right.
And especially when it comes to men's health, you think of things like sexual function, libido, things that like give a man a mojo. And so you have this stigma of, if something's happening with that realm of your life and your testosterone is going down, you start to think of it as like, you might be losing your edge, your mojo, what makes you a man, right? And so not being able to want to seek help in that area is what I saw a lot of. And so you need someone, that's not just like, doesn't feel like just a doctor, but actually like a friend, like a homie, someone you build a relationship where somebody can tell me, oh, me and my wife aren't doing good this month. I need you to look at my like different levels, or I need somebody to help me focus on getting my performance back in the gym, or I'm not doing as good at work anymore because of, I think maybe my testosterone is going lower. But these are things that when you take the time to talk to somebody, get to the bottom of the root issues, then you can actually do more than just blood tests, but you can actually see what matters to them and what's affecting them. So that's kind of where my interest sparked into, men's health, longevity, and anti-aging.
Nice.
And all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. It is true. Like there's, for women, it's for so long they've had the med spas, they've had, the whatever, the clinics, the weight loss clinics, and it seems like it is mostly always marketed towards women. And then women are very comfortable with getting plastic surgery, enhancements, and doing things for their health. But men, we don't.
Right.
What is out there,
Exactly.
There's not a lot of that out there. Like
Mhm.
if somebody were to ask me, where could I go before I knew of you?
Mhm.
I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where you go.
No clue.
Like,
Yeah.
probably even. But the problem is that even if you go to your physician, they don't necessarily have the knowledge on how to help you with the things that you help people with.
Correct. Yeah. And there's a lot of things changing too. So like, for example, something like testosterone replacement therapy and even HRT for women, just always had a stigma of being, maybe something maybe more dangerous, or maybe giving you that look that a lot of people think of with like steroids, and kind of confusing steroids with testosterone optimization therapy. But a lot of the new data, I mean, the FDA just released a black box warning for hypertension and heart disease for testosterone replacement therapy. So it's no longer, restricted medication. It's no longer a black box warning. So things are changing in terms of realizing that there's a right way to do stuff. And so if you're giving somebody too much testosterone or too much of anything, like weight loss medication we're talking about, it can be very damaging to the body, right? But if it's done right, if it's done safely, if the levels are watched closely and you're looking at all the different parameters, checking somebody's liver and their kidneys and everything, making sure everything is working fine with the treatment, it actually can decrease cardiovascular risk, decrease stroke risk. So, I mean, a lot of these things are based on new data and new studies. And so when you keep up with it, then you can always offer your patients the most cutting edge therapies, right?
Yeah.
It's not just men's, it's funny because it is men's health, but like my favorite patient would be, and I was, tell my patients to try to bring in their wives or their significant others, because getting the picture from, the story from the male patient is one thing, but then hearing about it from, their partner or their wife and like, what would you say? A lot of times the wife will be like, well, no, I mean, like you're saying you're sleeping well, but I hear you snoring all night and you're not sleeping well. He's like, really? I didn't know that. Or like, they never talked about it.
Telling, yeah.
But it's like, I need to know that because sleep is, one of the most fundamental hallmarks of longevity and anti-aging, right? And so before we get into like all the medications you can give somebody and all the diet instructions you can do, I mean, things like sleep and restful REM sleep and things like that can be so helpful, right? So hearing the wife or the partner's story can be equally as important. And so that's why I think of it is men's health, but there's a huge component of it for the women.
Yeah. I think it is important that to, wipe out that stigma of, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, if, it's good for you. And then especially like me, I have kids, I want to make it as long as possible. Like, so, I am now over 40 and I'm getting much more interested in what I can do for longevity because I want to walk at my kid's wedding. I don't want to be on a cane and getting pushed on getting pushed on a wheelchair. I mean, no, but I mean, that's true because honestly, like it's going to be somewhere around the age of 65, 70, probably when they get married. And I have three kids, but specifically my daughters, I've already calculated it. I'll be in that range of probably 65, 70 when they get married. So it's like, what am I going to look like? And so now that's why I'm so addicted to your page. Because I'm like, I need to start now. Like
absolutely.
Looking into all this.
When things, start to actually really take a toll and start to really crash. So if you start now, I mean, you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the curve. I heard this meme or this analogy the other day. I loved it. It's like you want to beat the monster up when it's small and when you can actually do something about it. Not when it's Godzilla and it's eating you up and it's eating destroying the whole city, right? Because by then it's too late, right? And so you're at the perfect age where, I mean, you look like you're in good shape. You're at like a perfect, age where,
Thank you. Thanks.
And it's not about like, sometimes it's only a couple of tweaks. So I literally have patients where I see them, I'll spend an entire hour with them. And then at the end of it, I'll tell them, you don't need any medication. You don't need any supplement. I'm just going to change 2 or 3 lifestyle things, which I think are going to be the most actionable things in your life. And just that alone can totally change somebody's life, right?
Yeah.
When you sleep, how much sleep you're getting, low angle sunlight in the morning for 3 to 5 minutes, moving your body every morning just to give yourself a little bit of your own time, personal time. And then these are all, proven stress relieving measures. And these are things everybody can do. Intermittent fasting occasionally throughout the week, 16-8 ratio. So it's like, it's not always about taking everything under the sun. Exercise is, by far the most anti-aging, longevity enhancing thing anybody can do, without putting anything else in their body, just doing that.
Yeah.
So it's not always about, having multiple treatments on board. Sometimes it's just about knowing a couple of things you can do to start from And then once you get that all kind of balanced, then you can maybe even add a couple of things.
I mean, it's so good to hear you say, it's refreshing to hear you say that it's like not everything is going to need some crazy medication. You know, that's not the goal. The goal is, like, from what I'm hearing, is for you is it's actually really like you get deeper into it, where you really see what the needs and what the lifestyle is. And you're not just trying to, like, okay, let's just medicate, or let me just take this pill. And you know, it's good that you could do that, because I'm sure I'm gonna be in your office soon, because I'm looking at all the tests, and you know, the tests that you do, and the blood tests and stuff that will help. Because I am interested in longevity, and I, like you said, let's kill the monster while it's small.
There you go.
And so that takes me into, like, I personally have a 10-year vow renewal coming up in November, right? And for the couples out here watching this is what I really want to get into. Okay, so I live mostly a sedentary lifestyle, right?
Okay.
And also being a wedding DJ can be unhealthy, right? Eating the food, the appetizers, the drinks, like, you know, it's all there, right? You know, and so for me, and a lot of people out there that don't necessarily know on their own what the best method is and what the safest, healthiest method is to lose weight. Here's what happens. Let me draw a picture for you. So somebody gets engaged, right? They get engaged. They're all excited. They're all happy. And then that's great. But then pretty soon they're going to have to pick a wedding date. So they pick a wedding date, but then it's pretty much known and expected that brides should get into and find their wedding dress and do that a year out from the wedding date.
Wow.
So here's imagine what happens. So it's Christmas time, New Year's. That's when a lot of engagements happen, typically, like by statistically. So they'll get engaged around Christmas time or New Year's. And then, you know, then they'll be engaged for 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months. And then they'll pick a wedding date, which will be like a year and a half and out or something like that, or a year out. But here's the problem. They were just in the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, they got proposed. Okay. They're already probably on a weight gain, right? And they're on vacation and they're traveling maybe because it's New Year's, Christmas time. And then now people start thinking about, all of a sudden it's going to click, like, well, I would like to be, for women, I would like to be a couple size smaller. For men, like, man, I want to look good in my suit. I would like to, I mean, even me personally right now, I would love to lose solid 15 pounds before it happens, before November. Now, for me, it's easy because a suit can be taken in like quick, right? But wedding dress is way more complicated, especially depending on the design. Is it a corset design? Is it going to be fit really, really fitted, really tight? Is it a mermaid? Is it a mermaid dress? Like, there's all these factors, right? So the big thing I want to get to is, if people are going to, like, in 3 months, try to drop, you know, if a woman's going to try to drop 2 sizes, 3 sizes, if a guy's going to try and drop 10 to 15 pounds so he can get a more fitted look suit, I really just want you to walk me through, like, because people do crazy stuff to crash diet. They'll starve themselves. They just won't eat. They'll go get stuff like, you know, they'll go to the grocery store. They'll go to the Ralph's and get all this, like, fat burning, whatever, green tea pills. Like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So I would love for you to walk through, like, for someone who maybe isn't a big workout person, gym person, is it like, you know, what everything's out there, Ozempic and all these things options. What would you recommend to someone who's trying to do that in like a 3-month period, lose the weight?
For sure. So, I mean, great question, by the way. I think the most important thing is starting with what not to do, things that will actually harm you, things that will actually detriment your health. And so, you know, you said your example was about 20 pounds in maybe 3 months, somebody's trying to lose.
I think typically, like that would be ideal. Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to avoid anything out of the realm of 5 to 8 pounds per month. Okay, that's like your most important number to remember.
Oh, don't lose more than.
Don't lose more than 5 days.
Really?
Yeah. And so basically 1 to 2 pounds per week. Okay. Once you start to lose more than 8 pounds per month, you have to understand every time you're losing weight, we're trying to lose more fat than we're losing muscle. We can do that by promoting things like zone 2 exercise, which I can talk about separately. But when you're losing more fat than muscle, you're still losing some muscle mass. And so once you lose about 8 pounds per month, you then start to lose the muscle mass in your face. Okay. And that's really important.
That's the first place.
You know that Ozempic face that people get?
Yeah.
And you get that really sunken in face where I think, Scott Disick had it in one of his pictures, and people are like, oh, like, don't get that Ozempic face. So that's an example of when GLP-1s are used or abused in a way that's not safe, right? If somebody's giving you, too high of doses to start with, or going up too fast, and you're feeling nauseous, those are your body's way of telling you, hey, maybe I need to take it easy on the next dose, or not go up so fast, because it can be detrimental to your health, right? And so once you get above that 8 pounds, you lose that muscle mass in your face. Our face is actually supported by muscle and collagen, right? And so as we get older, our collagen diminishes, decreases, our muscle mass goes away, and it's reflected on our face with like wrinkles, right? That's how we get wrinkles, because you lose that support. Now you have wrinkles. So it's like if you're trying to prepare for a wedding by losing weight, but then you end up looking, 10 years older because you lost all your facial muscle mass, and now you have wrinkles on your face. Did you really do yourself a benefit? Why not? On top of that, when we increase our fat loss or weight loss too fast, above 8 pounds per month, we also get a lot of stress. So it stresses out your body. So now your cortisol is going to go up. And your cortisol goes up, that can reflect in, infections. You can end up with acne on your face. So now you're already preparing for a wedding, but now you have pimples coming out. So now you're going to be like, oh my God, am I going to have a full breakout? It's probably going to lead to a full breakout because you're stressed about the one pimple you had.
Right.
So it's like snowball effect of like stress and, weight loss that's too aggressive, which, is really important not to do. So kind of goes back to like the physical and the mental part of it, right? And so a lot of the physical part of it is going to be manifested by the mental part of it, right? So making sure you're taking care of, the basic things, like making sure, you're getting some stress relieving or relaxation techniques in, because I'm sure, a wedding has to have significant amount of stressors to it. And it's a happy stress because it's a union of two people that love each other, and it's a great celebration, but it's the most important part of a lot of people's lives.
It is. Right?
Yeah. And so you have multiple people, hundreds of people you have to make sure are happy and taken care of. Everything has to be perfect, right? You have to you want to make sure you look your best, right?
The best.
And all of these stressors, if you're not doing, the self-love, the meditation, the whatever, prayer, whatever it is for the person to get them to feel like they're managing their stress level, and, sleep is a big part of it. But those things are just as important, because remember the way I see the skin is like a window to what's happening inside the body. Right. So people that have that nice glow to them, and their skin is totally clear, a lot of times it's because they have good gut health, or they have good mental health. Their hygiene is optimal. And so taking care of stress, taking care of the mental components of all the things that are going to be happening in the wedding that we know are going to eventually at some point be a little bit stressful, is just as important as the weight loss. So kind of going hand in hand. From the physical part of it, how to lose that 5 to 8 pounds a month safely.
Yeah. Right.
It's a great question. So I've told this analogy probably 100 times to all my patients, because it's the best way I found to kind of summarize how our metabolism works. And the way I describe it is as imagine like a tank. Okay. And that tank is going to be representative of our body's usable clean energy. Okay. So it's almost like a hydrogen fuel cell gas tank, or a clean energy gas tank, right? And that energy, I want you to think of the energy currency as glucose, okay? Mm-hmm. And the glucose basically is going to be any carbs that we eat. Mm-hmm. Let's just say, and there's some exceptions to this, but for the purpose of the analogy, most of the carbs that we eat turn into glucose.
Okay.
And then they go into our bloodstream, right? Mm-hmm. And then at that point, they go into this tank. And this tank is basically glycogen. Glycogen is just chains of glucose. But just think of it as the same thing. It's going into the tank. Mm-hmm. And the only two places it can really go in the tank are the liver and the muscles. Mm. So the liver and the muscles are what store that energy. So if you had let's just say, Rachel has a big loaf of bread, and she, at that point, all that bread becomes glucose, and it's going to get stored in one of two places, mainly the liver and the muscles. Now, about 5% gets stored in our kidneys and other areas, but for the most, and our brain can store some too, but for the most part, liver and muscles.
Mhm.
All right. And the liver can hold about 200 grams. And that's pretty constant in our lives. You can't change the size of your liver. Like you pretty much hold as much as you hold.
Yeah.
But the second part is very important. The muscle part of it can change over time, right?
Mhm.
And so you can store on anywhere between like 300 to 600 grams of glycogen in your muscles.
Mm.
So the important thing to understand is after that loaf of bread was completed, she had some Skittles and some other food. All right.
Some Starbucks,
some, sugary drink from Starbucks.
Yeah.
Well, now there's no more room. The tank is full.
Okay.
So what happens to the extra glucose that she had? It has to get stored as fat. So that tank is only finite. The only way we can grow that tank is by growing muscle mass, which is why muscle mass is so anti-aging and so longevity improving. Because if we can increase that tank, now the excess carbs she's got room to store it.
Got a place to go.
The muscles are big enough to store it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not overflowing into the fat. It's not storing as fat. So one of the most important things we could do, and you were saying if you're living a sedentary lifestyle, is adding muscle mass. And so you want to be training at least 2 to 3 times a week. The 2 to 3 times a week, you want to be doing some zone 2 exercising, some zone 5 exercising. The way to think about that is like the two opposites of exercising are the two best ways. They kind of tax 2 different energy systems in our body. So zone 2 would be, the reason they call it zone 2 and 5 is how much of your maximum heart rate you're achieving.
Okay.
And so zone 2 would be like 50 to 60%, sometimes 60 to 70%, but basically, incline on a treadmill, brisk walking, getting the heart rate up, but being able to manage it for about 30 minutes in that setting. So you're only slightly uncomfortable during that workout.
This is bad news for me because after 5 minutes, I'm like,
there's good news. So that's where the zone 5 comes in, right? So zone 5 is like, you're just, you're going on like a crazy sprint, or you're doing like the battle ropes or like HIIT training for like 20, 30 seconds on, 20, 30 seconds off.
Okay.
Right. And so a combination of those two are really good because they're taxing different energy systems. So the brisk walking, the 30-minute zone 2 burns fat.
Okay.
That one you can even do you don't need to have a lot of energy in your system when you're doing that one, because you can just go to your fat that you have.
Right.
Okay. But the zone 5 is mainly using glucose. So you never want to do HIIT training on an empty stomach. You want to make sure you have some carbs in your system. That's probably the only exception to when you can have a little bit of carbs, is if you're about to do a HIIT training or zone 5 energy, because you're going to use that for your workout. But the zone 5 is really cool because it boosts your mitochondrial production. So you're actually changing your VO2, which is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during a workout. You're training it to have more mitochondria at baseline. And by doing that, that means that when you're not exercising, you're burning fat throughout the week. So now you're like, you might have done a HIIT training on Thursday.
You stay.
Yeah. And it's anti-aging because anytime you're building new mitochondria or new organelles, you're boosting, longevity. You're adding new organelles to your system. So that's something that's a must. Exercise is a must. We talked about how it increases that tank, building more reserves for more carbs, so it's not turning into fat.
Right.
And then the second part of it would be diet, right? So what are you having? And so that's probably, second, if like right underneath that in terms of importance.
Okay.
And the way I love the 16 to 8 intermittent fasting. I think it's, again, something that is very attainable. It's a very small change people have to make in their diet. If you really think about what that means, is all it is, just decrease the time that you have dinner. So if you normally have dinner at like 8 or 9 and you snack afterwards, let's just say you have dinner at 6 now. Okay. And then in the morning, instead of having breakfast and, having like, a sweet coffee drink, we're used to having like those lattes with like the artificial sweetener and the sugar in there. All that's going to do is cause you to have a morning glucose and insulin spike, which means you're going to have a crash, an afternoon crash. So just eliminate that from your diet. You can still have a coffee in the morning, but don't have it with like oat milk or milk. Just have like basic black coffee drink.
Yeah.
And then by the time you break your fast, so around like 10 a.m. is really, that's 16 hours.
Yeah.
From 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. is 16 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so all you did in between there was just not have any junk food, not snack, whatever. You can still have water, obviously, your supplements in the morning. But then the beautiful thing about that is your liver only has about 8 to 10 hours of glycogen reserves in it. And so after that 8 to 10 hours, the second part of that fast, you're like burning fat.
Interesting.
And so now you're burning fat throughout the day. And then, in the beginning, people always say, oh, Dr. Haad, this is so hard. Like, I feel like crap. I mean, like, I'm like, I have no energy at work. I'm like, but what happens is your brain actually adapts to the new energy sources of burning fat. And so when you burn fat, you get fatty acids that come out of it, and you get ketones that come out of it. And initially, your body might be like, well, what is this source of energy? I don't even know what to do with it. I'm not going to use it because I want my carbs. Like your body gets used to carbs. Exactly. And then you get insulin resistance because your body gets too used to carbs, right? Which is not good. So, but then your body craves more carbs. It becomes a cycle. But you'll learn if you do this for a couple of weeks, you get past that first couple of weeks of like, being hangry in the mornings and like people are like talking to you, like, I don't want to talk to you. Don't come around me.
Yeah.
Once you get past that, you'll notice like this much higher level of clean energy throughout the day, including your work day and including not having that mid-afternoon crash because you're changing your whole metabolism. Like now your brain is utilizing ketones and, fatty acids and energy, which is just a higher source of energy for your brain. And so it pays dividends, just not from your health standpoint, but if you did this, these two things. So you're adding zone 2 and zone 5 training to your exercise regimen. You're educating people on this imaginary tank of good energy, of glycogen that's usable, that you don't want to ever overflow it. So now people understand that increasing their muscle mass is important. And then you implement intermittent fasting. I mean, those three things can make the tremendous 5 to 8 pound of safe, clean muscle loss just by themselves without using, medication, supplements, GLP-1s, which obviously they have their purpose. And, I always think of it as somebody who's severely overweight. I think they can use the most benefit from the GLP-1 because when you get them that initial amount of weight loss, it takes the stress off their joints where they actually can work out effectively, right? Because when you're really overweight, let's be honest, it's hard. It's hard to exercise. It's painful actually.
Yeah.
And so getting a little bit of that weight off so that they can work out and exercise, but it all comes down to those, key fundamental components. And that's probably now keeping that weight off for the whole year. That's a whole, that's a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication. But you're saying, for like 3-4 months, if you can get that regimen.
Yeah. So if you did all that, so what I'm also hearing, which is interesting, because I don't personally fully understand like the Ozempics and the tirzepatide and like all this stuff that's out there. Is that from what I'm hearing that if you're only looking at like a 15-20 pound loss, you really shouldn't. You shouldn't go that route. Is that correct?
So I could talk about this for an hour. I'm going to try to.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. No, we want to hit. It's okay.
It's so different for everybody.
Okay,
and there's so many factors that go into this, and what people don't really understand, what people don't realize about the GLP-1s is it's not just for weight loss. It actually helps so many people's overall disease risk factors. Okay, so it improves insulin sensitivity. So your hemoglobin A1C, which is a huge demonstrator of longevity, improves when you're on it. Your lipid profile improves on it. So people who have elevated LDL and even the really bad versions of LDL, like the oxidized LDL that you really don't want, we see tremendous improvements in our patients that are on the GLP-1s in their cholesterol profile. Okay, we see that in a lot of studies, and it's one of the indications for Ozempic right now in the GLP-1s is actually for preventing cardiovascular disease, preventing strokes. And so by helping somebody and their metabolic health, you're actually helping, not just longevity, but actually prevent massive disease burden. So weight loss is one of the main things, but before there was weight loss, there's a treatment for diabetes, right? We found that the weight loss thing we found secondary. We're like, oh, wait a minute, these people are losing some weight too. You probably saw those Ozempic commercials where people are dancing around. I'm not gonna sing that song because it's obnoxious, but you know what I'm talking about. So, and then so that happened afterwards. In fact, the commercial at that time used to say, oh, and by the way, you could also lose some weight. Some people are losing weight. Right. And then they're like, wait a minute, let's do another secondary FDA, criteria for this medication being just weight loss.
Right.
And so the health benefits are something that I think can benefit, tremendously a lot of people. And then if we think of the weight loss as a supplemental thing, like, oh, like let's try to help somebody, lose some weight, but just as long as we're thinking about it as improving with the mindset of improving their overall health.
Right.
So I'm going to help somebody's metabolic. That's why we do, crazy 60 plus, massive biomarker blood tests, because I'm looking at not just LDL, but oxidized LDL, looking at, inflammatory markers. And we're seeing improvements in inflammatory markers, cholesterol markers, A1Cs, fasting blood sugar, which is a, huge risk factor for long-term health. So I think the fact that it's improving people's health overall is what to know more about the GLP-1s than just the weight loss as a primary thing.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. What I just want to touch on this. What do you think about like meal suppressants? What's the deal with those? Are they should they be avoided? Are they bad? Like in your
Depends.
opinion?
Are you thinking of like green tea extracts or like?
No, I'm talking about like actual like I don't know what the medication would be, but like
the tirzepatide, the semaglutide, so same class.
I guess that's what where
yeah,
it would be at. Yeah, like
no, so I mean, I think so. Look, I think it's great. I think especially for the people that were included in the studies. So there's two major studies. One is basically for Ozempic, or semaglutide is the brand name. So Ozempic would be the brand name. Semaglutide is a drug name.
Okay.
And then so think of also Mounjaro and tirzepatide. Those are the two.
Yes.
So with tirzepatide, there's a study, 68 and 72 week study with Ozempic and versus Mounjaro, and people lost 15 to 21 pounds of their weight. Okay, so but the people that lost the most weight, and the study was actually conducted on people that were obese. Okay, they were BMI greater than 30.
Okay, right.
And so it works really well for the right patient, somebody who's actually overweight, right? But once I've noticed this as a graduated curve. As you start to go down in the weight, like when you start to get people, first of all, living in LA, like you have a lot of people that are underweight asking you for the medication, which are just like,
that's crazy.
I'm sorry, I can't do that. That's not a good, and I recommend strongly against it. And if you want to go that route, I've absolutely.
That's like a body dysmorphia.
But when you have the people in the 25, kind of the normal range, and they want to lose weight for like a quick shred for a trip, or those patients get, from my experience, a lot more side effects than people that are obese because they already have a good metabolism for the most part. That you can use things like supplements like berberine or different like AMPK pathway producing supplements, like even metformin is a great one. Resveratrol, quercetin, fisetin. There's so many good supplements out there that are really good for you that might be a better option than a GLP-1 for somebody who's at the normal weight level or not overweight, because generally those side effects, the nausea, the indigestion, the mood changes people are getting with those GLP-1s, I'm seeing it more with people that are in the lower weight range or the average weight range. So I always recommend doing those supplements first for people at that level. But then if you're, severely overweight and having a tough time getting to the gym, I think it's a good fit.
That's a good fit. Okay. So we've got that. So we're going to have a few months here. We're going to knock out this 5 to 8 pounds a month. So let's just say somebody loses 12 pounds, and let's specifically talk about like specifically the bride who's got to go get this dress. She gets the dress. She's a size that she wants to be or within that realm, and then now though we got a whole year.
Yeah,
typically a year. People are a year out that she's, or maybe 9 months or 10 months or whatever it is, that now we have to keep off the weight. So they already achieved this pretty good goal of like, wow, I did it, boom, and they're looking good and they're feeling good, but now comes mother-in-law, and now comes the planning, and now comes your sister with all these opinions, and now you start looking at the numbers and how much, 6,000 for videography, 2,500 for photography, 1,500, 2,500 for a DJ. These numbers start adding up. Venue costs starting 16, 15 grand, 17, 20 grand. Catering, oh my gosh, dude, like the numbers. And then all these moving parts. Yeah. And then also specifically, I know this to be true, a lot of brides are alone, like kind of alone in this process, especially if they can't afford a wedding planner. If you can afford a wedding planner, a lot of this stress goes away. But most brides are dealing with it on their own. Even if they book an all-inclusive venue that comes with all the vendors and has a package, there's still a lot of decisions to make.
It's a lot.
The floral, what kind? Do you want chargers? Do you want Shivari chairs? It's like, it's real. There's right. There's all these decisions now you have to make, and guest count and seating charts. Like, dude,
who gets invited? Yeah.
It's, oh my gosh, invites, all this stuff. So,
wow.
So now we gotta dealing with all this wedding stress plus work, plus home life, plus taking care of things. It's an extremely stressful time period. So now, what is the game plan? Is it like, do you kind of like, I without lack of better words, like, do you let yourself go a little bit, and then as you get closer to the wedding, start doing this kind of like crash weight loss thing, or is there is there an easy, like not easy, but is there a better game plan for someone, again, who mostly lives a sedentary lifestyle, doesn't have a lot of time, doesn't know a lot about working out? What's a good way they can plan on trying to keep that a stable weight, like where, they're not having to crash diet again, like really close to the wedding day?
Amazing question. Yeah. So, I mean, so we got the 3 months of weight loss. We got that weight down. Bride's got the wedding, the dress.
Yeah.
And now she's got an extremely, stressful 10 to 12 months ahead of her. And how does she
Right.
keep that weight off? Okay.
Right.
So the biggest thing about, you mentioned the stress, and so prolonged stress is extremely harmful on the body because we generally have an acute phase. So in the acute phase of stress, our body is adapting to improve our performance. Okay. It's trying to get us through that stress.
Okay.
And it does so by increasing our cortisol level. And so we'll see when we check people's cortisol levels, when they're high, that means that they're probably in the acute phase 1 of their stress, which means, okay, something's stressing them out. Their body's adapting by building more cortisol, and they're trying to kind of accommodate and be able to perform at that high level. But your body's doing it with an expectation that this is not going to last too long, because I can only do this for so long.
Right.
But what happens is after the burnout phase, you go into something called phase 2, which is now the body doesn't even have enough, ingredients to make the cortisol anymore.
Oh, you're running out.
So now you go to this period where your cortisol goes too low, and it's actually almost, when you look at the curve, we do these functional medicine, we do these curves from like morning, afternoon, late afternoon, and then in the middle of the night, you'll just see a flat curve, like it never even went up like it's supposed to.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's the most dangerous part. That's the part where you're now, pulling the derivatives of what you make the stress hormone, the cortisol, from. You're pulling it from your sex hormones. You're pulling it from your mineral hormones. You're pulling basically DHEA and pregnenolone, which are the precursors, or like the father and the mother, I call them, of all the hormones that we make. And cholesterol kind of is the one before that makes all of them. But once you're depleting yourself of your DHEA and your pregnenolone, you're not just not having cortisol in your system, your testosterone's tanked. Okay. If you're a woman, your estrogen, your progesterone, everything's going to be affected, and you're just not going to be functioning from top to bottom, right? Once you get to that point, you start to binge eat, you start to stress eat, you're putting on weight. Your body is doing things to try to replenish those nutrients that it needed to make those hormones, but it doesn't know how to, because, you're burnt yourself out. So it's asking for more food. So now you start stress eating, and your body changes. We get that, they call it the moon phases when you're stressed out and you're going in that adrenal crisis. You're gaining weight in the midsection, losing muscle mass. All the things that we talked about earlier that we want to avoid are now going to come back and potentially really just stress out this bride for the wedding.
Yeah, right.
And so the things that you want to do to prevent that from happening, if you're finding yourself that you're stressed, obviously getting blood work done, seeing if your cortisol is heading up, seeing if your hormones are kind of not aligned. A lot of times it's just from stress. Is a bit, stress management techniques. Okay. And we talked a little bit about sleep a little bit earlier, but there's some really interesting studies. If you look at the difference just between 6 hours of sleep and 7 hours of sleep, like it's tremendous. Okay. So there was one study that showed a 24% increase in insulin sensitivity just from that 1 hour of sleep.
Wow.
Okay. They showed that your cortisol levels are going to be, significantly higher with that extra hour of sleep being less. Your inflammatory markers are going to be higher if you're losing out on the hour of sleep. There's another meta-analysis, which is meta-analysis just means basically they put a bunch of studies and a bunch of data together into one big study.
Yeah.
So almost 500,000 patients around that figure, where they found that, all cause cardiovascular mortality and all cause, mortality was decreased by that extra hour of sleep.
Wow.
So people aren't factoring in how much, 7 hours minimum of sleep can, pay a toll on your health. And so getting ready for a wedding, you have a million people trying to contact you, and you're doing so much stuff. You have to make sure you're giving yourself the self-love of giving yourself at least that amount of sleep, because you need that REM sleep for your hormones to function. REM sleep is your dream sleep. So you got to be having dreams to replenish your body. In the morning, when your cortisol is the highest, that's when you want to make sure you can actually get even low angle sunlight for a couple minutes. It's been shown to have tremendous effects for, promoting your health. And then if you can just move your body, I know our mornings are the most hectic because we got all our emails, all our texts, everything from the night before. Right. And we're like, you just feel like you got to get right back into it.
Yes.
But it's like, it's so beneficial if you can just give yourself, and if you're busy, 10, 15 minutes just to move your body, just somehow, whether it's, a walk outside, whether it's like
just
stretching,
anything.
yoga, just something where it's just your mind, your thoughts, your time. And, it doesn't matter who's calling or who needs you at that moment. This is your time to just relax and move your body. And when you move your body, you're already starting your day with endorphins, with dopamine. And these are all things that help regulate the stress response. So that's going to have the longest term, ramifications on how somebody feels for the wedding, but also how they look, right? Because when you're stressed out, you're going to get, we talked about acne a little bit. Your GI, your gut health's not going to be good. You don't want to be like at the wedding and you're going to have to like, rush to the bathroom. Now you got IBS. Or,
IBS. That's great.
Nobody wants that. Like
wonderful side effects. Yeah.
But then it has to do so much with what we're putting in our body, right? And so, you want to shower your body with love. With everything you put in it is going to have some sort of a ramification on how you feel, right? And so we always talk about, microplastics, seed oils, and everybody knows about processed food now and avoiding additives, avoiding dyes. So especially when you're coming close to a wedding, you want to make sure you're nurturing your body with whole foods, organic foods, plant-based fiber. And plant-based fiber is an easy thing anybody can do that is going to keep you full for a long time, helps promote healthy gut microbiota, and helps with insulin spikes as well and glucose spikes. Because when you have fiber in your stomach, and fiber in your GI tract, it kind of likes to sequester the glucose and your carbs and kind of like time release it into your body. And so you don't get those damaging blood sugar spikes. Yeah. And then, if you are going to be, no one's going to be in this perfect diet 24/7 because that alone is going to stress you out, right? Yeah. But there's things you can do for when you are, indulging or you're having fun or you're on a trip or you're even having a drink. Like just don't have sugar. Don't have like processed sugar. Don't have simple syrups. Just eliminate things from your diet that are going to be bad for you. And it's not that many things. It's like, we just mentioned seed oils, processed foods. Yeah. And that alone can make such a big difference for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then during this time, along with all those things, I think it's so good that you talked about the stress thing because and all the things you can do, because I know that's like the biggest part. Because when we get on the phone, sometimes I've had like been on the phone with brides doing the DJ consultation. And they literally like start crying, like they like it's just they're like you can tell, you can hear the voice cracking, and they're like at the end of the call they're just like, oh, I'm just you can just hear it like that they're and we don't call it out because that would that'll make it like you can tell we're not trying to add salt to the wound. So it's great that you talked about that. That's like, I'm sure people are gonna love that information. So important, right? The stress management and taking care of yourself. What about? I know what we talked about, the working out to lose the weight. What should the workout plan during that process up until wedding day? What should that look like? If you're just trying to maintain, you're not trying to lose weight anymore. Mm-hmm. So how intense? How many days a week? And is it still that zone 2? Is it what does it look like?
Really good questions. Yeah. So it's a little bit of retaining your muscle mass is very important. I don't want people to lose that weight and then they did it while maintaining their muscle mass, and then all of a sudden they start losing their muscle mass, right? Because muscle mass is the single most important longevity organ that we have, right? Mm. And so maintain that muscle mass would be, the way I like to think about it in terms of exercise is you never want your body to be too content, okay? So if you're only doing weightlifting, eventually your body's just going to get used to that. It's no longer challenging.
I've heard that before.
It's not going to be plateau, have as many of the effects as it had when you first started, right? The same thing goes for if you're only doing running. And that's why I like the zone 2 and zone 5, because they're two drastically different workouts, right? But, in terms of maintenance, you still want to do ideally 3 to 5 times per week, but at least 2 to 3 times per week if you can maintain exercising. And then if you can stick with just once a week doing the zone 5, it is going to help boost your mitochondria and help burn fat when you're not exercising. So it's really helpful to do that. There's so many supplements that are out there now that we, have a lot of data on creatine, 5 grams a day. I would definitely recommend that in terms of maintaining your muscle mass, but also helping with, cognitive benefits. We're finding that creatine can help people cognitively, but, help keep you sharp while you're preparing for the wedding, while also helping to retain your muscle mass. It's like creatine is like your ATP, your energy reserve that you have, like your savings account for when you run out of energy in the gym. Yeah. Those extra couple reps and those extra couple sets can come from the creatine, can help you really maintain that muscle mass. Yeah. And then in terms of, the stress management and things like that, magnesium glycinate is a great supplement for helping calm people down and stress relieving things. Multivitamin is huge because when you're stressed out, you're using more B vitamins, especially. Vitamin C is a great antioxidant that'll help decrease free radicals and oxidative stress in the body. And then, you have your adaptogens. So adaptogens are things that will help you in states of low or high cortisol level, or basically the phase 1 or the phase 2 of stress, the burnout phases. Yeah. And so adaptogens are things like ashwagandha root, rhodiola, ginseng. These are supplements that can help keep the stress down, keep it manageable, and then, having enough reserve in the tank for when you do have that, stressful time is key to kind of keep those supplements in mind as well.
You mentioned magnesium, which what is that? Is that the magnesium? I'm taking something
magnesium threonate or magnesium glycinate or magnesium oxalate.
Oh man, there's a bunch of them. There's one that's like a salt. Is it chloride? No, not magnesium chloride.
So there's also those. So magnesium threonate, magnesium glycinate are the most thoroughly studied right now. The threonate is going to have more of a cognitive benefit.
Okay.
Because it's just really well absorbed by the brain. And then the magnesium glycinate has more of a relaxing feeling to it. So a lot of people will take magnesium glycinate at night to help them with sleep. But the magnesium threonate is the other one I would recommend for kind of the cognitive boost that you get throughout the day.
What about potassium citrate?
Potassium citrate is going to be good for you. Also helps. It's good for like your bowels. Helps you, kind of maintain healthy bowel function.
Okay.
Potassium in general is huge for all your cells need potassium, and so you think about your electrolytes. There's always going to be like potassium and magnesium in there. Those are probably two of your key things to take for sure.
Yeah, I've actually been taking that just this last week. Is I guess it's the magnesium.
Magnesium citrate is going to help you with bowel function as well. I'm not sure if that's the one you're taking.
No, it was the one you said for sleep.
The glycinate, magnesium glycinate. Yeah,
I've been taking that with the potassium citrate.
Okay, cool.
Citrate. Yeah, so I've been taking that because it helped with a lot of like body pains I've been having.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Like working,
muscles need that,
dancing up and down, all the time. So.
Did you notice you felt a little bit better?
Immediately the next day I was like, oh my god, I feel incredible.
It helps you relax too a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's like a miracle thing. I was going to ask you about it, so I'm glad
these are natural things, right? I mean, these aren't anything pharmaceutical or coming from a drug company. These are things that we can take to. But there are thousands of supplements out there, so make sure you're getting
Get the right one.
There's so much stuff.
Yeah.
And there's so much bad information out there.
Nothing makes my blood boil more than this information.
There just is, and that's why. Like, I know this is a wedding podcast, but like also at the same time within this episode, like it's nice to have someone like you to put out good qualified information versus these people are like, this one hack will change you forever, and it's like and it's like, will it? Is like
preying, and they're preying on people that aren't just. Not everybody's going to be having gone through med school, gone through residency, like spent 10 years learning biochemistry and medicine. I mean, there's a lot of people that just don't know everything, and so you're preying on people by leading false information, disinformation campaigns, and taking advantage of a lot of times, young people who we're going to have a whole new generation that thinks that, probiotics are going to cancel out alcohol. And I was literally, I was listening to Dave Asprey the other day, and he was saying that, he's like, probiotics cancel out alcohol. And I was like, what does that even mean? So just to break that down, I mean, when you ingest alcohol, 90% of it gets absorbed in your stomach and it goes directly to your liver. Okay.
Ooh,
only 10% of alcohol makes it into the rest of your GI tract, where you have your gut microbiota, where you would have your probiotics if you took them.
Wow.
And yes, some probiotics are helpful in breaking down acetaldehyde, which is toxic, but you're looking at a maximum effect of less than 10%.
Less than
right?
10%.
And so 90% is going to the liver, and it's doing all kinds of damage there. The acetaldehyde is a horrible byproduct, and your liver has to deal with it. And, to say something like as careless that millions of people are going to watch, that probiotics are going to cancel out alcohol. And now you have, people that are going to be watching that. They're going to start binge drinking, taking probiotics, thinking that they're in the clear.
Oh, yeah, I'm
and,
good.
you're going to have people end up with like liver disease
and liver
or like
failure.
alcohol, or they're going to go to the ER and say like, hey doc, I was told I could take probiotics. And I'm pumping their stomach because now, they have alcohol poisoning, but it's like stuff like that just drives me crazy.
Bad news.
Evidence-based, medicine is what we like. So always look at the studies if they're listed.
Right.
And even for supplements, I like full script because everything on full script is like kind of physician backed. And so those prescriptions like kind of come from a doctor and through full script to then make it to the patient. And so that's kind of how I get my patients or supplements, to make sure it's validated
Can anyone
source.
just order through Full Script, or you have to go through a physician?
It does have to go through a physician, but it's very easy for anyone to make a profile. It takes like 5 minutes for both, the patient and the physician. And for me, it's like whenever I recommend something, I just send them a Full Script automatically. So they get all the recommendations and all the third-party data behind it. So
that's super cool.
Mine is working.
You mentioned sleep. So you said the minimum is about 6 hours of sleep?
7 hours.
7 is the big
seven.
Yeah,
7 hours is the ideal.
7 is where you get that big benefit. But I mean, 7 and 9 is
what's
great.
too much? What's too? Is there too much sleep?
I love when I get asked a question I don't know the answer to.
Okay,
that's gonna be one of them. So I mean, too much sleep. What's gonna happen though eventually is when you start your sleep wake cycle is you get more of that deep sleep, that really deeply restorative sleep. It's that alpha wave sleep happens in the beginning, and then towards later in the night you start to get more of the REM sleep, right?
Right.
And as the night goes on, you're basically getting less of the deep sleep. Okay, so I guess the answer would be that your benefits would go down after about 9 to 10 hours because you've already gotten enough of the alpha sleep.
Right.
You're maxed out on the REM sleep.
Been through the cycles.
You've been through the cycles enough times where you've built up enough restoration.
Right.
And what you're doing when you're sleeping is actually your melatonin that you normally have, which is like what builds up in your body. It's your sleep hormone, your cortisol is your wake hormone. So you want them to be in balance.
Yeah.
And so if you sleep too long, I mean, your cortisol is going to be high and you're continuing to sleep. It is going to potentially throw off your circadian rhythm.
Interesting.
And then, you guys have probably heard about like the ADP, like when you have caffeine and what caffeine does.
Yeah.
And so as you later on in the day, you get more tired, you get that buildup, and that's what causes you to then want to go to sleep. Right.
Right.
And when you sleep, you restore it. And and that's actually really important because that's what makes your ATP. It's what makes your energy.
Okay.
Right? And so sleep restores basically essentially your ATP or your energy production. And so if you're sleeping when your cortisol is higher during the morning, too late, theoretically that might throw off your circadian rhythms and throw that cycle off. So it's probably not ideal.
Okay.
I don't know if there's too much data or anecdotal, I guess case studies to really demonstrate deleterious or bad effect.
Right.
Actually do.
I have to look into that.
You mentioned caffeine, and I know a lot of people, myself included, sometimes we don't get enough sleep. So then we rely on not just caffeine, but like energy drinks.
Yeah.
What do you think about energy drinks?
So it's kind of a twofold question there. So what happens is, so the adenosine that you're building up when you have the caffeine or when you have the energy drink, it's kind of like you're borrowing energy.
Right.
You're not getting energy. You're borrowing it. You're usually borrowing it from energy that you might have had later in the day. Okay. Because by blocking your adenosine receptors in your brain, that's kind of tricking your body into thinking that it's more awake than it should be. But you're not actually decreasing the adenosine. It's still building up in your bloodstream.
Oh.
And so as the day goes on, your adenosine level goes up. As it gets too high, you get sleepy. Right. That's kind of how your melatonin response is triggered, and that tells you to go to sleep.
Right.
And so you're building up adenosine, but you're blocking the receptors. So your brain thinks, oh, there's not much adenosine there. I'm awake. But as soon as that receptor, as soon as the caffeine comes off of that receptor in the brain, it will then see that your adenosine, holy crap, it went up like 2 times as much as it was when I last checked it.
Yeah.
And then you have like a crash, like you're really sleepy. So
mega crash.
what you don't want to do is you don't want to have caffeine or energy drinks after like about 12 or 1 p.m.
Okay.
When you do that, that's when you start to throw your sleep wake cycle off because the half-life of caffeine is a little bit too long to the point where at night you're still going to have that in your system.
That energy. Yeah.
And you don't want to have that because that's going to affect, we talked about the alpha wave sleep, the deep sleep, the REM sleep are all going to get affected by caffeine generally after about noon to 1. So have it in the morning and then kind of just try to lay off of it.
Okay.
Unless you have something obviously really important to do. But that's why, well, you got things like magnesium, like things that give you like natural energy.
Right.
Okay.
Which you can always do. Green juices are great for that. I mean, it's so many nutrients, phytonutrients in there that can help you.
Is tea good too? Like green tea or?
Green tea is great. So matcha is great. L-theanine is in matcha. So L-theanine kind of balances out the caffeine that's in matcha. Okay. Because L-theanine kind of relaxes you. Mm-hmm. So it works on your glutamate receptors in your brain to actually make them more relaxed. So glutamate is one of your most excitatory neurons. So by relaxing your brain and giving you a little bit of caffeine, it's a little bit of a smoother approach to energy as opposed to that what you get from the caffeine and a little bit of the crash.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to try. I think a matcha in the afternoon is a lot safer and a lot better for you than having like a coffee or an espresso in the afternoon if you really need to like kind of try something.
A matcha. I've never tried that. So.
Matcha's great.
It's an acquired taste. It has a little bit of an earthy taste.
Oh, it's good.
But once you get used to it, it feels so good. You're just like,
it's like a hot drink, right? Like almost.
No, it can be iced too.
It can be ice. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's great.
But watch out with the same thing. They'll put a lot of syrup in those, and they're just doing the op. Then it's just going to give you the glucose crash. So
stay away from Starbucks.
Be careful.
Basically.
Well, the matcha, You want to make it at home,
Because I'm thinking about like for when I got married, I did not sleep much the night before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was I've had insomnia a lot my whole life, and then also because we work late night jobs, right? We're not out usually from those venues until like 1, 2 in the morning, depending on how late it gets. Then I drive hour home. I'm home at like 3 a.m.
Going to bed at like 3, 4
a.m. something like that. So
on the weekends, and it's a weird schedule.
But then you're just used to it, even on your days
I'm
off,
used to it. Yeah.
It's like I have insomnia. So the night before my wedding, I slept maybe 2-3 hours because I had to be up in the morning. We had to get there, go set up and everything.
Wedding day's a lot.
So I only slept like 3 hours, and then I drank an energy drink, and then I like the ceremony was a blur because I was just like, I don't know what's going on here. I just had like it was all hitting me all at once.
Emotions.
Yeah, I don't know what was happening. So by the end of the day, I'm like, dude, I don't know what just happened. Like I don't know what this day was like. So yeah, I'm sure there's other people. I'm not the only person, obviously, that's going to go through something like that. But so you're saying important to get sleep. How would you recommend someone get sleep if they have insomnia or difficulty sleeping, or if they have anxiety or whatever it is for the day coming?
For sure. No, I really think that, so that's something that I think should be addressed a little bit before the wedding to kind of really try to tackle the source of the insomnia.
Yeah.
I mean, like we talked about stress is a huge factor in insomnia. So same stress relieving measures that kind of talked about would apply to that. But there's a lot of other reasons that people don't realize that they're having insomnia. I mean, a lot of it could be like sleep apnea. Right. I mean, snoring, by itself is a huge cause of sleep issues and health issues. And so getting kind of getting to the underlying real issue of what's happening with somebody's sleep. We have sleep studies. So a lot of pulmonologists, I'll prescribe a sleep study to a patient where you go to a lab, they check your sleep, really thoroughly to see where the disturbance might be. Might it be, sleep latency, which is like, falling asleep. Some people are just in bed for hours and they can't fall asleep, or are you having issues with, just waking up every 20, 30 minutes for no reason. Right. A lot of times it can be, if people have to go use the restroom, like you got to go pee every 30 minutes. Yeah.
People that drink a lot of water. You're not water drinkers.
Yeah. And people with prostate issues, like when we get older, we're not sleeping as well as you did. And then sleep, goes down over time. Like, older people don't sleep as much. They wake up earlier. So all these type of factors getting, not everybody needs to get a sleep study. I think a lot of it comes from like a history. Are you snoring, or like what other, manifestations somebody might have, looking at their labs, making sure they're not like anemic, no issues with their labs is always important.
Right.
And then just kind of getting a comprehensive picture. I love my Oura ring. I always have a good eye on. I think with these, these health tracking devices are amazing.
Great. Okay.
You can see exactly how much deep sleep I'm getting.
Oura. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, it's really good for sleep. Sleep tracking is horrible for working out because like they do a lot of weight training.
Yeah.
And so you can't do weightlifting. So I'll be doing like bench pressing or like something where I have to hold a barbell, and then like I'll put it back on, and it'll be like, why are you so stressed? And they're like, dude, this guy is like
calm down, dude.
Like homeboy's like heart rate jumped from like 40 to like 150. Like what happened?
It's like dialing 911 for you.
Like calling the cops.
It's like it's something off. Like it doesn't. And I'm like talking smack.
Yeah.
Always frustrates me when it does that. But the sleep management is key with that. It tells you like how much REM sleep you're getting, how much restorative sleep you're getting.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start. Especially if you get insomnia, just pick one of these up. It's going to help you with, managing that.
My watch does that. I have a Samsung watch, but yeah, it's been tracking my sleep, letting me know how much sleep I'm getting per night. So I've been tracking that better now, but trying to figure out like what's a good way to get sleep.
It should tell you also if you have apnea because you're going to have.
It did.
Oh, so you had some drops.
It does check that. It says I don't, thankfully.
It says you don't. Okay, because that's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your heart rate variability, is it tracking that as well?
Yeah, it tracks all of that.
Is that looking like it's pretty good and healthy?
It says it's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
It says it's fine.
Kind of. I love that it does that because a lot of times it's just your vitals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's like your autonomic nervous system, your parasympathetic, sympathetic activity.
Yeah.
To make sure it's functioning properly. Like we're supposed to rest at night, but like, our heart rate variability is a great indicator of our sympathetic and parasympathetic response. So if it's in a good range, over 20, that means that we're going to be mounting a good parasympathetic response at night. We're sleeping well.
Okay.
That's
So it's
cool.
key. So it's just all in these
Yeah,
little
it's
things
amazing.
now, right?
It's amazing. It's
It
all
really
honest.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We live in an age of information. There's
Right.
just so much out there that we can access. It's great.
You can just track it all.
All right. So
Sure.
he brought up the good old energy drink, but let's talk about a little bit different kind of drinking. So
I know where that's going.
yeah. So here's another thing. And we see it happen. We see this happen at weddings. We see couples from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, ethnicities, and we all come from, different places, and I'm sure family history, all this stuff probably plays into this, and maybe a little over analytical, but
Mhm.
here's what happens. Here's what happens is couples, they might start off with a little bit of light drinking, maybe like they do a shot before ceremony to calm the nerves,
Uh-huh.
but they're already starting, right? And so and they may or may not have eaten. They're nervous, they're anxious. The guy's usually pretty chill,
Mhm.
but he's with his boys and they're knocking back some beers maybe.
Uh-huh.
And then the drinking just continues for 5 to 6 hours. It's 5 to 6 hours.
Champagne toast,
Champagne,
dance floor shots,
mixing alcohol. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot
different
of
drinks,
different mixing.
signature drinks. Then everybody wants to do shots, and then we've seen it both ways, where people can handle their liquor, and then where people just aren't maybe used to drinking and celebrating like that. And I've seen grooms carried out, blacked out. I've seen brides blacked out, carried out. We've seen bride and groom in their respective suites throwing up and sick. And so here's a fun question.
Mhm.
For somebody who's not, I mean, like for instance, him, he doesn't drink. He doesn't really drink. So, and I don't know how much you drank on your wedding night, but
I didn't.
okay. Yeah, you didn't.
I don't know.
But if you're the type of person who maybe doesn't usually drink, or even if you are someone who can handle their liquor, etc.
Uh-huh.
Like what are some things the couple can do, like in a sense, like prepare their bodies either, maybe, I don't know if it's 2 days before, the day before, the night before, like
Uh-huh.
what kind of things can they do so that like they can have a good time, maybe drink a little heavier than usual, but not black out, not get
Not
sick.
be carried out of the wedding. So
Yeah,
you actually
not
saw-
get-
that's
not-
amazing. Wow.
not get so like, we've seen it where they're just on the dance floor and they're just, you can
Like
you
zombie
can,
mode.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can
that's
see it, like
yeah.
they still want to go, but like they
It's
just
like-
probably had a little, they're celebrating. It's fine. It's like
Yeah.
there's no judgment. It's like I would do the same thing. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will do the same thing.
Yeah.
So but what can someone potentially, like, is there anything they can potentially do to prep their bodies for that night? Like,
Yeah. So I mean, that's a great question. I think a lot of it comes down to, we were just talking about how, like, getting sleep the night before your wedding is difficult. So you're already tired. Okay. And then there's that, the rush of dopamine and emotional surge of like a ceremony where you're, marrying somebody. So there's a high that you get from that, all the endorphins that go along with that. And then I think just the inevitable crash, the end of all the preparation, seeing everything go well.
it's usually after ceremony.
Everyone's happy. Now everyone's dancing. Okay. We got past the hard part, and then there's a crash, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of that crash, when you're on a depressant like alcohol, is going to be amplified. It's going to be way worse, right?
Mm.
And so I think not getting, obliterated, because it's your wedding. You want to remember your wedding night. And it's crazy how many weddings I've been to where, I mean, I think it was a blur for the bride and the groom.
Usually.
Yeah.
No.
And it's like, I want to remember, who I was talking to, what their wishes were. I want to remember my vows, the ceremony, because that's something I want to remember for the rest of my life, right?
Right.
Granted, there's probably cameras and videographers and stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Hopefully.
but I mean,
yeah.
I've also been to a wedding where the videographer lost the tape and there was no video. It was a beautiful wedding in Positano. But so things like that happen. You want to remember stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so, easy. So there's like, obviously the easy answer and then the more scientific answer, but something that anybody can do is having, a glass of water, something hydrating in between a drink. So instead of having like a drink and another drink, try to have a 8-ounce glass of water in between each drink, so you're keeping yourself hydrated. Because one of the biggest ways of why you feel hungover is because you're dehydrated. Second thing, we kind of already alluded to the mixers. All these cocktails, they all have simple syrup in them. They all have even if it's like elderberry syrup, I don't care, whatever. It's all made from, basically just refined processed sugars.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the worst thing for your hangover the next day, aside from the alcohol as well, right? Because you're going to have those sugar spikes, insulin spikes, the crash that comes along with that, which you're probably going to feel a headache the next morning from that, right? So now you have a headache, now you're hungover, no bueno. So try to have like sugar-free drinks. It's not too much to ask for. You can still have, your hard liquor, whatever you're having, but just have it with something that's not sweetened, okay? And then, so that's like the basics, kind of obvious thing that somebody can do. Obviously limit the amount of drinks you have, because the more you have, the more burden you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then things that you can do supplementally. I mean, I know a lot of people will, do a hangover IV the next day. And I think people are really, overdoing the IV bag treatment these days. And I think
overdoing it.
Yeah. And I think people are really just like kind of preying on just lack of data. I mean, there's really not a lot of data that shows that IV treatments are really going to benefit you a lot more than oral treatments, unless you have, debilitating nausea and vomiting from the hangover, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're nauseating, you're vomiting, you're losing gastric contents, you're losing a lot of electrolytes through that. Your whole acid-based metabolism is going to get thrown off. So for that reason, somebody might benefit from an IV. But there's a lot of, but most of the time, when you're hungover, you can have oral intake. You're not going to be in a situation where you're absolutely sick. And don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, working in ERs and hospitals, I've seen IVs save people's lives.
Yeah.
Right? Pancreatitis, ileus, severe complications from surgeries, or severe ICU, really bad ICU stays. These are people that need the IVs to live, right? So that's obviously goes without saying. But the med spa vibe of, come and get your, and they have like these like the hangover cure, or like the immunity cure. They have like different names, and then like the marketing, they'll have like different colored bags.
Yeah.
Like the purple bag, it's not actually purple.
Right.
Okay.
No,
I mean, but it just looks like that. And it's like a flashy thing that somebody can do to order. Like, I need my hangover wedding cure. And it might have a lot of the nutrients that you need in it, but there's no reason your body can't, take them orally, or at least, injections, IM injections, subcutaneous injections, because every time you do an IV, you're permanently damaging one of your veins.
Wow.
People don't realize that. But it's like you're puncturing your vein, you're causing scar tissue, no matter what anybody tells you.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you only have a limited amount of veins. As we, age, our veins get insufficient. We get venous insufficiency. You get, edema and swollen legs from that. Yeah. Why would you want to further diminish your veins by like injecting or sticking a needle in your arm every time you like don't feel right?
Yeah.
Right. And so obviously if you're nauseous or not feeling well, we talked about, you could do it. But most of the nutrients that you would want to try to have, like get yourself an electrolyte drink, shake it up, have a couple of those, and then in terms of like nutraceuticals, things you can have. So you guys heard of NAC or N-acetylcysteine?
No.
So that's something that basically is a precursor to glutathione, and your liver uses it with glutathione to basically break down acetaldehyde, which is the worst byproduct of alcohol. And so if you have like some N-acetylcysteine in your system kind of before you drink, then you'll have enough stores to create glutathione during and after. And then you can take glutathione the night after. So, or like the morning of. So you could do like N-acetylcysteine before, glutathione after. You also need NAD and B vitamins, which are consumed in breaking down alcohol. So NAD is a huge one. NAD, it needs to be injectable. I don't believe in the oral form. It doesn't do anything. But that can be an IM injection or a subcutaneous injection. It doesn't need to be damaging your veins. Right? Yeah, there's no point. I mean, and again, there's exceptions for everything. There's people that we would do an NAD treatment on if they've been like on a long bender and their energy is completely depleted. They have horrible brain fog and they just need a boost. That's something that can benefit from an IV NAD treatment. Yeah. But for the most part, the subcutaneous absorption is just as good and you can get by with it. And so those are a couple of things. B vitamins, multivitamin, vitamin C is huge for antioxidants to help with alcohol. And then we talked about magnesium, helps you feel better, helps you feel calm. The glycinate in this case to help, relax the nerves a little bit, make you feel a bit better. Milk thistle is really good for helping the liver recover. So 200, 400 milligrams of that. It's just a natural herbal supplement. And so just keeping yourself hydrated, getting rest. I mean, if you got a long flight to your honeymoon after that, right? You don't want to feel like absolute garbage on that flight. And it's probably going to feel worse when you're on a flight if you're hungover. So, having a morning of nurturing love and a good breakfast and making sure you get, maybe a little bit of the supplements in there would definitely be helpful. But the main thing is hydration during the drinking, after, and then in the morning. You want to make sure you're getting those electrolytes back because you're utilizing and kind of burning through those electrolytes when you're drinking.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
It's funny is I didn't know that, like off the top of my head, but my body was definitely like warning me, like, you better not drink. You haven't, because I didn't get enough sleep. I was only on the energy drink that day. So I was like, I was already like freaking out. So I can't imagine if I had slammed drinks on top of that.
Well, but also you don't even drink like casually or socially anyways. And if you do, it's rare.
I do. Yeah. I don't like drinking out, like if I'm outside of my house, if I got to figure out how to get home later, that's like where I get paranoid. I'm like, I don't want to drive. I'm not driving.
Energy drinks are rowdy. They got like a bunch of crazy stuff in them too. All those different.
Have you seen the NOS energy drink?
I haven't seen that one.
That's my go-to one. It looks like NOS, like for your car or whatever.
I don't know how you drink
nitrous. It's
I personally,
strong.
I can't do like there's only one energy drink that I can drink right now that I know of, and it's because Red Bulls, Monsters, I get like the heart palpit. Like I get.
Yeah, I start to tweak. I gotta I'll just start walking and talking people's face off.
Yeah, I can't.
Like, is this guy ever gonna shut up? I was like, man, I had an energy drink. Yeah, Red Bull. Yeah,
I can't do regular energy drinks. The only energy drink I drink right now it's called Oxy Shred, and that one.
So that was more of a workout.
It is, and it's all. It has some, I think, some thermogenics, like some niacin and stuff like that.
Those are good.
It's supposed to help with fat burning, but also there's energy in it, but it's more clean, natural caffeine. So it's not like that super high dosage, and it doesn't mess me up. I can drink a whole one and I feel fine. You know what I mean? But it gives me a little of an extra.
Try you already do the matcha, right?
I do
that nice,
occasionally. Yeah,
I call it my smooth energy. You know what I mean? We gotta get you on that.
I gotta try that. Yeah,
for sure.
I'd be embarrassed to show you a NOS now. I don't want you to read the label. Don't read the label. Don't look it up.
Yeah, it looks like the NOS bottles of Fast and Furious, right?
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, Drew. Because he only drinks like Red Bulls and stuff. So I brought him a NOS. And he's oh, thanks, man. And at the end of the night, he's like, dude, I'll never drink that again. Like, had me tweaking out. I crashed super hard.
Go to sleep. He was probably up until next morning.
It's like 3 times as strong as a Red Bull or something. Like,
it's wild.
Yeah. Man, this has been just really great, and I think you already covered my next question, which was like, the morning after. That was good advice. Like morning after is gonna be rough, especially, and I think this is especially important for people who just like generally like just they're not drinkers. They don't drink a lot. It's super. It's only on special occasions or holidays or whatever. But some people just some people can handle it, some people can't, but it's nice to have some extra ideas, even if you can handle it. Like the information you're giving is still helpful because you can have an easier morning after. So when you have to get on that honeymoon plane at 6 a.m., and after your wedding night, this is great information. Things you can plan on doing.
Sure.
Do you so before we wrap up, I would love for you to. I know, again, I love your social media and there's a lot of great information. Would you like to touch on anything that, like, just in general, let's just say not wedding related.
Yeah.
Like through you, things that you do, what are you really passionate about that you think just in general for people's general health should be doing, and things that you offer? Like,
great question. Yeah. So I think this all comes down to like somebody the other asked me like, okay, like obviously, I spent so much time in medicine. I've spent almost a decade, practicing medicine. And as you practice, you build your style. You start to, become one with what you're doing, and your confidence builds, and you develop a style, right? And somebody's like, "What? So why are you like, doing these videos? Like, what's the point?" And I was like, "It's a really good question." And I thought about it, and I realized that it's all about spreading awareness, right? And I think that we live in a time where medicine is changing drastically, and we lived in an age where reactive medicine. We're now realizing Western medicine and reactive medicine is just not working, right?
Not.
And I want people to understand that, we live in a lot of epidemics. We had in the 1980s, 13% of adult Americans were obese, and now 43% are obese. So it's 3 times as much. And you see this disease burden in the healthcare system, and you see it
get better
on a daily basis. Yeah. And we're seeing people's testosterone levels crashing. I mean, men's testosterone levels are down significantly. We're realizing now that there's so many things in our environment, like microplastics, that are acting as endocrine disruptors, literally going in and blocking our receptors.
Wow.
We're finding on autopsies in brains up to 2 teaspoons of PFAs or forever chemicals in people's brains deposited throughout their brains.
Wow.
These are chemicals that are going across the umbilical cord and affecting development of babies. I mean, these are things that we're now realizing that we can actually do something about with the proper awareness. And so we're seeing, just tons of money being put into the longevity-based practices and longevity research. And we also live in a time of information where there's AI, there's ChatGPT, there's so much data available that the more people, are going to be having conversations about this, the more people are going to be getting the right information, because there is, we talked about disinformation and misinformation out there. But if we have enough people like the David Sinclairs and the Peter Attias and, the Hubermans that are spreading good information, and there's more of them out there that then are going to learn from them and spread more, awareness. Eventually, my goal is just for this to just spread like wildfire, so that everybody, becomes aware of what's helping their health, what could be harming their health. And we just see these epidemics start to change. We see the obesity epidemic kind of come back down to where it was in the 1980s. We see medicine that's like not a reactive medical, field where we're like, oh, now you have, you got a heart attack. Well, here's 20 medications that we're going to just throw at you in hope that like maybe it's going to prevent the next thing from happening. But then you see something worse happening after that because of maybe the medications, right?
Yeah.
And so, really focusing on prevention, really focusing on awareness, getting the word out there that there's a lot we can do. And that's kind of what we do is, the individualized, personalized approach. Let's go over your health from top to bottom. I want to know your social history. I want to know everything about what matters to you. What are your goals? What are your hobbies? How's your sex life? How's your, how are things going at work? How, because these are all going to help kind of come up with not just a diagnosis with obviously detailed lab work, but also like what you're focusing on when you're practicing.
Yeah.
So I think if more people start doing this and it becomes less of a, people preying on people that maybe don't have the knowledge or, just thinking of it as growing a business. I think I want more people thinking of it as, helping people, like why we went to medical school, why we, took an oath that says doing no harm and trying to help people. That's the whole point. So I want that to kind of spread. That's the key.
And then you have, I don't know if it's still active. I don't know if you can plug it here or not, but you were offering on your social media, I saw right now, or maybe it's past, I don't know, but I would love for you to plug it, talk about it before we finish. It's a test. It's like a blood work.
Yeah. So it's still active. It's a really, really advanced comprehensive blood work panel, over 60 biomarkers. Just to give you an idea of what biomarkers mean. When you get your routine blood work from your doctor's office, you might get 10 to 15, markers, maybe sometimes more than that, but generally checking for really, really surface things.
Obvious stuff.
And like you're looking at maybe like kidney function, liver function, electrolytes, which probably aren't going to be off or out of whack unless something is severely wrong with your body. Maybe you're dying of an illness, right? But it's not getting to the bottom of actual longevity-based markers or actual misalignment or something that might be wrong with somebody's health, that isn't just visible on the surface, right? Something that might be playing a factor 10 years from now. And that's where you can see somebody's, advanced cardiac markers, like we have something called a HSCRP, which is a high sensitivity CRP, which is a really advanced inflammatory marker, which as we see that go up, people's risk of chronic disease goes up. Okay. We've got things like adiponectin, which is a test that specifically tells us how somebody's burning fat in terms of insulin sensitivity. This is all based on, new cutting edge data, right? And that's just 2 of them, right? And so you have 60 of those that you can really, if you have somebody, I've been, analyzing blood work for 10 years for my patients, but if you have somebody who's kind of a little bit more experienced, can really look at that and say, okay, I can almost now, I was telling somebody the other day, like when I used to walk into the ER and patient had like a pulmonary embolism, there was like this look that they had, like, and you could almost smell it, right? They were like, their heart rate's a little bit elevated. They look a little diaphoretic. They look a little pale. Like, there's a look that you have for certain patients. And now there's a look for your labs that have a certain pattern. And then when you talk to the patient about it, that's kind of what we're offering is a really in-depth look at somebody's labs.
Yeah.
And we're doing it for, really incredible price right now, which essentially is, what the lab charges us, but we want to build patience, build awareness for, how labs should be interpreted and what people should get out of them. And then they always get a consultation with me, not, it's not going to be a mid-level or somebody else. It'll always be with me to kind of break everything down for them. And it's not, we're not pushing treatments. We're talking about their health from top to bottom, what could benefit them. And then, from there, it's also a lot of this has to do with the patient. So, a lot of these things are going to be lifestyle choices that I recommend. And so a lot of it has to do with the hard work too that goes into it. But you need someone that's going to keep you accountable. Like me, I'm gonna, I'm gonna bust your balls if you're not doing what. Hey, I told you to do this, and this, and I'm not seeing it on your follow up blood work. Like what happened? And so that is part of it. Like the health coach part of it is as important as the physician part of it too. So,
and just a quick question. I know I'm asking this because I know my wife would want to know: is that only for men, or could you do it for women?
Absolutely for women too. It's done through a separate sister company I have called MD Helix.
Okay,
and that's a longevity practice for everybody, for men, for women. It's a little bit more focused on, if you had to compare the two, it's probably like a Venn diagram because they both have a lot of overlap. But the Zeus Men's Health is a little bit more focused on hormone optimization, and the MD Helix is a little bit more focused on functional medicine. So we get a little bit more of the longevity and functional medicine in that one, but the packages are there to just suit whoever is looking for what. But for the women, obviously, always happy to help, and that's my expertise in the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine is for men and women. For sure. Yeah, that's happy to help.
Nice.
Honestly.
Wow, that's amazing. Before we completely close, is there any other final thoughts? Anything you wanted to mention, talk about, anything?
I think it's really cool what you guys are doing. I mean, bringing the awareness into the wedding realm. I remember, one of my sisters was getting married, and she had a kidney stone literally like a day or two before the wedding.
Wow.
I remember me and her super close. I remember how it affected her, and she was super stressed out leading up to it. She had kidney stones in the past, and they usually came in times of stress, and I saw how it affected her. Luckily it made her lose a couple pounds, so she was happy about how she fit in her dress.
Yeah.
But seeing, that's why when you mentioned that you wanted to bring me on and talk about these things, I kind of had a personal experience with someone really close to me that had been affected by stress and the gravity and the magnitudes of weddings. And I think it's so important and cool that you guys are adding awareness to that huge, probably most important part or day of your life. I mean, you said you were married. Like, would you say that was maybe one of the most important days of your life?
There's been nothing bigger than that. Yeah, that's
exactly. So it's like the most important day should have the most important strategy and health and fitness and wellness. I always love adding wellness to it because it's not just health, it's wellness, right?
Yeah.
And so how you take care of yourself, how you feel, coming up to the wedding is going to be just massive in terms of how you perform at your wedding. So love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Glad you guys brought me on.
Thank you. And just for the audience, I would love for you to just walk through your Instagram, your websites, where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So you can just follow me. So at HaadMD, and so at HaadMD is my personal Instagram, and then I have at Zeus Men's Health. It's going to be more of the Zeus Men's Health stuff. TikTok is the same thing at Zeus Men's Health, and then same with my YouTube channel at Zeus Men's Health. You see a lot more. Try to do more educational videos so people can get something out of it. And again, like we said, spread the awareness.
Nice. And where's your practice? Or do you have
the physical practice is in Burbank.
Burbank, okay.
So if anybody's in the area, I am also in Sunset a couple of times a week in West Hollywood too.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll close this out. So again, you heard the socials. The socials will all be in the description of this video, especially if you're on YouTube or Spotify, if you're watching on Spotify or listening on Spotify. And just remember, everybody, we are on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, anywhere or watch anywhere. We ask that you subscribe, like, comment. And again, thank you to our guest. Thank you so much.
Dr. Haad, thank you.
Super, thanks.
Super valuable information. Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you. All right.
Sure.
All right.